Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. It is Cuppa with Michelle once again, 2 p.m. on a Thursday. So thank you for jumping in. I am going to wait just a little bit to let a few of you in while I just go and have a bit of a sip. By the way, make sure you grab your cup of coffee, cup of tea, glass of water, your vino, depending on where you're joining us from. And we're going to be brewing and talking about something really amazing today. Excuse that. I had to wipe a little bit of the gloss because it's sticking to my cup, which I hate. Ladies, don't you just hate that? It's really, really annoying when things stick to your coffee cups. Okay, just I'm on stage. Yep, sure. Okay. Okay. Oh, something new that I'm learning there. All right. Just making sure we are okay and we are live. And yes, we are. So, again, good morning. I am Michelle T. Jones. I am a trailing spouse here in Fiji. I am your sustainable business and well-being strategist. And I've been helping trailing spouses for the last 14 years. Sorry, now I've forgotten. I literally lost it. Can't remember. Anyway, I have been so busy because it's 42 weeks before we go home. I know that's a long time. It's exactly nine months and 3 weeks before we go home. And when that happens, it actually means that we have to get started in getting things organized. In the past, when we were going around and moving around without a pet, without a dog, I wouldn't worry about the logistics and what needs to be done until 6 months before we actually move. With schools, it's easy enough if I have 6 months to organize where the kids are moving to next, and what we're doing in the next post, what have you. But we have a pet this time. We have our beautiful Doberman Duke, and because of that, it actually is a little bit trickier this time around. We have to get our documentation, our paperwork of getting him back to Australia this early. Can you believe that? 9 months before we move, we need to actually get that organized. Some people organize it 12 months before the move. I didn't want to organize it so soon because I just wanted to make sure that if anything went wrong, if we got extended or what have you, I had enough time in the export permit that we're gonna be getting to allow for that, um for the uncertainty, the changes in our exit date. So it's an exciting time, it's a scary time, it's a lot of emotions are there when we prep for our next move. A lot of excitement, I have to say, a lot of excitement. Can't wait for that next move. Can't wait for that next adventure, whether it's going back home to Australia, whether it's, moving to the next place. Around this time, we kind of get excited about that already. We start talking about, okay, what are the possibilities? What are the options? What do we want? And what do we want this next move to be about? Right? So there's a lot of mindset preparations that happens as well. And it's a great time. I seem to have a lot of this patches on my face. I think it's just the lighting because I don't understand. Yeah, it is the lighting. When I turn this way, it's gone. When I turn that, it's gone. It's just weird. It almost looks like I've got like brown patches there when I actually don't have any foundations on or any whatever contour stuff on. But sorry, I got distracted just looking there. For those of you that are just jumping in, please let me know where you're jumping in from. Make sure you've grabbed your cup of coffee, cup of tea, glass of water, and let us know, you know, perhaps what time of the day it is over there, and are you a trailing spouse? That's a really good question to find out, because I do love knowing who my audience are that are jumping into these calls. So again, 42 weeks to go. What is it that we're expecting? What is it that we're needing to prep for? And that's what I want to share with you guys, because for some people 42 weeks is a long time. And again, as I said, in our case, because we've got Juke with us, it's not a very long time. And I'm going to be talking to you guys about that. If you are a trailing spouse as well, and you are wanting to know what you need to prep for when you go back home, especially if home is back in Australia, I'll be sharing some of that as well. And also I think the important thing to remember is, as trailing spouses, we don't just move. We actually transition our identities. We change, because from where we are right now to where we're going, there's a lot of differences, right? Different environment, different opportunities, different situations even, right? Your ability to build a business is different, or to conduct a business is different. So there's a lot to take into account. We don't just close a chapter, we actually try and transition smoothly into the next. So we prepare ourselves and our families both emotionally and logistically. So mindset has to be there. Mindset has to, prep for all of this so that we can actually get it done smoothly. Okay. All right. So yesterday, yesterday, one of the things that I actually had to do, as I said, was to get in touch with the lady here. Siobhan is an amazing woman here that actually helped us get Juke into the country. And she's also going to be helping us get Juke out of the country. There are a lot of requirements for importation of dogs into Australia. And I think if you are going back to Australia, or if you are a trading spouse from another country bringing your pet into Australia, you do need to know what to expect. So yesterday I had to actually set up an account with the agricultural biosecurity site of the Australian government. If you want the exact details and where you need to go, send me a message so that I can share that site with you. Don't remember it from the top of my head because it was just a blur going through it. But yeah, so you basically have to prep for it. They give you guidelines and rulings. There's a new rule about a certain shot that the dogs have to have when they get into Australia. And like when we left the country, there were timings that had to be followed. And this is why it's not as simple when you have a pet, because the vaccinations for the dog will have to follow a certain timeline that's acceptable. There are some vaccinations that have to be X number of weeks old on the week that you're traveling. So those are the things that we need to take into account. Also, another thing to take into account is that when you get into Australia, you actually have to book your dog's quarantine stay. That doesn't just happen like that. All of that requires you to actually organize it straight away and book it straight away. And I was a little bit stressed about that, because technically we don't know the exact date we're going. We don't know where we're heading. And based on our experience, we don't usually know for sure 100% till about 6 months to 3 months before we head back. And so that was a little bit stressful for me. But we've already been, I have to say, since about, even December or even before December last year, already started talking about, okay, what are our different options? What are the different scenarios? What are we going to do? In fact, I got in touch with my mom and said, you know what if, this is our next posting? Are you going to be able to, welcome Juke into the country? And all that. It's all about the dog this time, which is so funny, because previously it was about the kids. It was about the family. It was about, okay, ensuring, we understood the schools, ensuring that the schools actually aligned with the schools and the education system we have back in Australia. And it's funny because now it's not even that. It is about the dog. When can the dog get there? What are the arrangements we need to make? Who's gonna be our backup person to actually get the dog out of quarantine, in case for any reason we're not in country at the time that happens. So yeah, a lot of things to take into account. Also, if you have a pet, you gotta check, what the quarantine period is for the dog in your country. So on their site, they will actually say that as well. So from Fiji to Australia, we have a 10-day quarantine period that happens with our pets. So from Australia here to Fiji, it was 7 days. Okay. Now, different countries have different laws, but the thing to also note is if you are coming from a rabies country or a country where rabies does exist, your quarantine back into Australia is definitely going to be longer. So you got to check what that means. Okay. What that means for you, your dog, and what it means financially, because there is a cost to that quarantine stay. Okay. All right. So, yep, organized all that, looked at what the costs will be to actually get the process started, what the costs are on the different stages. We have some shots that we're going to have to organize a trip to Nandi twice for. There are some tests that we need to organize, and we need to verify if it can be done here in Suva or if they're also um, testings that will have to be done in Nandi. So a lot of things have to be organized. And if you don't organize them early on, then you get stuck with, the difficult task of ensuring you have everything in place by the time you go. The last thing that you want is for you to leave the country without your furry friends, your furry family. They're not even friends, they're our family, right? And when we left Fiji to come sorry, when we left Australia to come here to Fiji, we actually we took Juke to Sydney because he was flying off from Sydney. We took him to Sydney, left him with the people that were gonna take him to the airport first thing early in the morning, and they were gonna fly off from there. So we took him, I think, uh, late afternoon, so that he didn't have to spend too much time away from us. It was like the ultimate last time, or the ultimate latest that we could drop him off with the exporters, because early in the morning he had to be seen by a vet. They had to take him off to be able to actually go. So we did all that. Juke left ahead of us. We wanted to make sure that he was going to be okay. He was going to get on that plane and he was actually going to be heading to Fiji. And we didn't leave until I think maybe about 3 days after. So we wanted to make sure all that was sorted. It worked perfectly well because we arrived in country even ahead of him getting out of quarantine. We got to organize our home for him, his crate, all his stuff before we actually picked him up from quarantine. And that's again now what we're needing to organize heading back home. We want to make sure that we don't let him fly from Suva to Nandi. We actually will be driving to Nandi, dropping him off there, leaving him at the very, very last minute that we can, and sending him off. So all of that has to be arranged. We need to make sure that everything is in place, right? So it's not easy to have your furry family with you on a posting, but I mean, I cannot imagine not having him here for the duration that we've been here as well. So it would never have happened. Would you have left your pets at home? I know there are some that have done that. They've left them with their families. But yeah, I just can't imagine myself doing the same. Just no, yeah, I cannot. Okay. So What are the other things that we have to take into account in this time frame? I think when you have children, slightly different from with us, because with us it's just the pet that will be traveling with us. When it's the kids, you need to sit them down, they need to get ready for it, because they need to prepare themselves for that trip. They need to be able to say goodbye to their friends. They need to be able to plan with their friends. Okay, where, where's the farewell gonna be? Blah, blah, blah. Because they have to get themselves also sorted emotionally. And sometimes that's the more difficult part, right? So we negotiate with the kids when we can about, okay, when the best time is, especially if someone's graduating, when can we go? Sometimes we can't negotiate, and sometimes we've left even before the graduation event has taken place, which is really horrible when you look back and you think about it. But you do the best that you can. And I think the important thing to note as well is that as much as it has pained us, our kids also understood the importance or the difficulty that we go through when we actually move from one place to another. There are checks that need to be done. There are, especially when we do cross postings, there are clearances that have to be organized back in Australia. So, yeah, makes me feel bad looking back at when we've had to rush off from one place onto the next. And but see, I guess that's just part of parenthood, isn't it? Like, there will always be situations in life that has to happen quicker than you would have hoped, or does not exactly happen the way you would have planned it. But you just try and do the best that you can. And that's the key. You need to try and do the best that you can. You need to try and help the kids get themselves ready for that move, get themselves emotionally and psychologically ready for that move. All right. I'd love to know what, sort of problems you guys have encountered with your children moving. And do share it, please. Okay. Just making sure that I have, there you go, my comments open. I'm not missing anything. Yeah. So, you know, identity shifts don't always only just happen to us, the parents. It also happens to our kids. It also can be difficult for them, especially saying goodbye to friends. I remember my eldest daughter being upset and saying, I can't do this. I can't deal with it. I'm saying goodbye to friends again. It's not fair, blah, blah, blah. But I have to say, kids are quite, what's the term? They're resilient. Kids are quite resilient, especially depending on how you've raised your children. My children have had dramas with moves sometimes, but I have to say that, when they look back to their experience as trailing children to their dad, they've actually enjoyed the experience. They've had good times and bad times in the moves, just like it would be, if we just stayed back in Canberra where we lived, right? And you just have to be there for them. You just have to be able to talk things through with them. And they have to just also grow in this experience. There's some things that we can't control as parents. And again, as I said, every parent will try to do the best that they can given the situation that they're in. So don't beat yourself up too much for it. I mean, as I said, I do still feel bad when I remember instances where we've had to move too soon, or instances when the kids thought that they weren't quite um, happy about the move, or when they were fearful about the move, and we just had to be there. We had to be able to explain things to them, and we need to trust that we are doing the best that we can for our family, and trust the relationship, trust the love, right? Come on, guys, give me some feedback, say hello. Put some comments up. We're live on two platforms. I'd like to hear your comments, read your comments. Okay. What is some of the stuff that people go through when they move posts, or what they need to, take into account? I think the changes in culture, what is that next culture going to be like? There's a lot of research that goes through, especially if it's going to be a cross posting. With us going back home, there is a reverse culture shock that usually happens. There are things that you remember which aren't quite how they are, or they may have changed. I remember some people in our posts before would complain and say, "Oh my goodness, service is so amazing in Australia. Over here in this country, service isn't so great." And when you go back home, you realize, it's not quite as great as what you thought. There are also dramas with service people with schedules and timings and what have you. And it's really important to, you know, perhaps just have a thought of it and then be prepared for it, right? Hey, Con, thanks for joining. My ever loyal friend Connie is here with us again. Just want to comment, I had hard time to explain to one child that we had to move. You have four, yes. And every child is different. So some will find it easier than others to actually comprehend the move. They will all have different concerns about the move, but yeah, the whole idea is that you just basically try and do your best. That's right, you guys moved. Yeah, so anyway, the other thing I guess that happens is when you start packing your stuff, there is some moments of like nostalgia. You remember things that have happened in the post. You feel bad about having to say goodbye. You kind of grieve quietly while you're packing, right? Because you're um you know maybe aren't ready to say goodbye to some friends, or that you will miss some people or some situations or some places. So all of that happens, but it's always, a lot of our moves are clouded, is that the term? But it's surrounded more by excitement. It's surrounded by being always looking forward to going back home. I think that's what it is, because it's always good to go back to family. It's always good to go back to what you're used to. Which one is more complicated, moving children or your dog? Good question. I think it's moving the dog. Because you know with the kids, we all travel back together. With the kids, we don't have to prepare for anyone to leave ahead of us. The process is the same for all of us. The only difference is we try and organize the schooling in the next place, right? But with the dog, it literally is, okay, well, if he gets there before we do, who's going to pick him up? If, for example, we organize his trip there and that doesn't happen, we had a friend here whose dog wasn't able to go because the dog had anxiety issues, and they had to sort out the dog's anxiety first. So he wasn't able to go on the trip. He was scheduled to live with his mom, right? With his human mom, and she wasn't able to leave with her. And so they're trying to help her control her anxiety so that she can actually go onto the plane and be okay in quarantine on the other side as well. So those are things that you have to be concerned about. We're not quite concerned about that because Juke already did that first trip coming here. We are concerned about the fact that it is going to be a longer quarantine period. Kind of worried because when he went into quarantine on this end, he developed cyclostitis because he kept holding on to his pee. We are kind of familiar with the way it's gonna work back in Australia, so we're not worried about that. and I'm hoping we're right in our thoughts, because whenever we would leave Juke in the kennel before, their where he sleeps actually has like a door, and he's able to run outside his area to pee outside. He doesn't like peeing where he sleeps. So I'm not worried about the same issue happening again. So yeah, there are more things to be concerned about, to check for. um, and you have to remember, in some cases dog quarantine periods are quite long. And if it's a long period, then some dogs can't handle that anxiety, that sadness as well, because they are our pets, right? So they stay with us, they live with us. And to be away from their humans too long can sometimes be very difficult for the dogs, right? So yeah, I think traveling with dogs, moving with dogs is more difficult than moving with children. Thank you, that was a really good question. Also, when you move with dogs, there is a bigger financial burden. And I will use that word because some people don't realize it. And you need to know that it actually costs more to move a dog. The paperwork, the process involved, the quarantine stays, all that costs money. The agency that will pick up on the other end, the agency that will organize getting them into the plane, um all have to be paid. And the amount of money that you end up spending can be quite a lot. I think we spent something like 8 grand the first time. I can't remember anymore, but I think it's around that figure. It might be around that figure as well going back home. So it's not cheap. It's not a cheap process. So again, things to take into account. And if you decide, again, because of all this cost, it's not worth bringing your pet, then you also need to organize who's going to be taking care of your pet while you go overseas, if you are leaving your country. But definitely going back home, I mean, I do know that some people end up leaving their pets because of some issues like anxiety and stuff, and then they have to organize who basically takes on the care of their pet in that country, right? Connie, awesome. So on your other video, you have your dress from 5 years ago. Do you always take everything everywhere? Isn't it easier to leave some back home? We did not take everything. Definitely not take everything. We do have stuff that are in storage. We have all our furniture in storage, our sofa and stuff that came from our home. Those are all in storage. So yes, we don't. And depending on where we're going, can dictate also how much stuff we bring. In some countries, you're told ahead of time you'll be in an apartment. You kind of talk to the people in that place, and then you go, okay, how big are the places that you usually have. You obviously don't want to have an empty house, so you'll bring some of your stuff. And again, as I said, it's important to bring something so that you can fix up the house and it looks like home, because otherwise everything feels very temporary, right? And you don't want that. It's hard to live in a place that doesn't feel like home. So we always bring some stuff around with us that actually will keep reminding us like of home. When we moved from Indonesia, Korea, Sri Lanka, Papua New Guinea, and Indonesia the second time around, we had like our Indonesian masks. We had, I call it my Bapa and Ibu, statues in all those postings, because when we sat down in our lounge in Australia, that's what we see. So in all our lounges in all those places, we had that. But when we came here to Fiji, we didn't bring that with us. So here in Fiji, instead, we brought, because we didn't have our kids as well. So everything had to change. We brought our favorite recliners, because at the last few years in Australia, we loved those recliners. And we actually got them on our last year in Indonesia. So that recliner, the recliner I have here in my office, traveled with us from Indonesia back to Australia, then here in Fiji. So, not everything comes with us, but we do try and bring stuff that remind us of home, that make us feel like we're at home. Yeah, but definitely not all the clothes. Oh my gosh. Don't even know how I could have fit all my clothes if I tried to bring them. Not in this place, at least. Okay. You do also still bring, like, we knew Fiji was going to be warm, but we did bring some winter clothes because we knew that we would still be traveling back to Australia or even to the US where my family lives, or we might travel somewhere else where there's a winter. So you also don't want to leave those clothes home, right? After all, our postings are 3 years. So for 3 whole years, we can't keep buying everything every time we move. So that makes sense. Yeah. You know what? Also, at the end of the day, I think you'll realize that when you move so much like we do, you realize how much stuff we actually all have and how little we actually need. I think that's a really big eye opener for us. That's why after every move, or before every move, even, like when once we've gone back home and then we need to organize for the next move, we actually get rid of a lot of our stuff because we realize, oh, you know what, we haven't used this for like whatever the last 1 or 2 years or 3 years. Don't think we'll need it, right? So we try and um clean up our wardrobes, our home. We do our spring clean, get rid of the things that we haven't used. We don't usually have garage sales. Very, very rarely have we ever done that. We usually just donate our stuff or give it away to whoever is wanting them. I do have to say that there are things that we do prefer to sell, but a lot of times people and friends of ours actually talk about the money they make in moving stuff away. I think with us, that's always been our mindset. If it's something that we don't enjoy, someone will enjoy it somewhere, right? Or it's the same thing as trash and treasure, right? Someone's trash is someone else's treasure. So I really, really believe that. Okay, so we talked about financial issues, financial burdens. I think the other thing to take note of if you're moving is to make sure that you have funds set aside for that move. So, like with us, we are moving back home. We move back and we will have to get a whole heap of groceries when we get started, our cleaning stuff. We need to, well, we don't have a home. We sold our home before we left, so we're gonna have to find a home. So there's a lot of financial preparations that have to be taken into account, a lot of budgeting in our last year in post to prepare for that move back home. I mean, mind you, people have to mindfully set aside money when you're in a posting anyway. But if you've been enjoying the posting a lot and doing a lot of travel, a lot of exploration, the last year is when you have to really take all that into account. With some people, if you are not moving around with government, there are some tax considerations to take into account as well, especially for the spouses that are working. So you need to bear that in mind. Start talking to your accountant and finding out about all that. With us, we are posted with the Australian government. We go back with the Australian government. Tax implications would be if I had a practice in the place, and whatever I've earned in that place, and if I paid taxes in the country. So, for example, here, if I had my clinic set up and I had to pay taxes here, I would have to organize that as well in Australia. And then there is a tax calculation that's made for how much I need to pay back home as well. So, all that have to be taken into account before you leave the country. So you're not like bandits leaving without taking into account your responsibilities, right? Um, yeah, businesses, a lot of businesses get closed down, unless you have an online business and a structure that you've organized that is movable. If your structure isn't movable, then again, remember what I was sharing with you before, the drama of having to close your practice, talking to all your clients, making sure they know that you're moving, helping them transition to the next practitioner, store, or whatever that they go to if you leave. All that has to be organized. Emails to advise everyone, change of addresses, and so on have to be organized as well. So a lot, there's a lot, right? A lot of stuff. And then as the months start getting closer, every time I see stuff around the house, I go, okay, yep, that one we're bringing, that one we're not bringing. This one's we're going to leave behind. You start going through that because you don't want to do that last minute. You want to know upfront, okay, what does it look like I am going to bring back with me? What are the stuff that I don't really want to bring back anymore? I was telling Adam, we don't really need to buy a lot of the usual stuff that we get from Australia. We usually buy our Nespresso pods, and that we're not buying that anymore. We have purchased like coffee, coffee beans, and coffee thingo from other places during our travels. We're going to be using all that. We're like literally going to try and wipe out what's in our cupboards so that we don't need to bring that back with us. So, I mean, they some of these things sound really basic, but mind you, if you don't think about them, if you don't plan them, those are the things that you forget. We have people who at the end of their postings go bananas because they need to get rid of everything in their pantry. They can't bring it back with them. So they, bring it bring it and give it to others. But it's always so stressful when you have to do it in the last minute. It's better to have plans for everything even before uh, the weeks start getting shorter, right? So again, 42 weeks is not a very long time at all. I'd like to know what your strategies are for those of you that are trailing spouses watching this. What are your strategies when you actually go through or you reach your 42-week before you actually move? When do you actually start organizing things? I have to be honest, before Juke, 6 months before the trip is when I actually usually get, okay, you know, in the in the mode of, okay, I need to get started with what I need to do. I think the other thing that I've also started organizing is because I know that when we go back, I will have weeks of just enjoying family back home, just, bonding with my kids again, bonding with the grandkids, bonding with the in laws. I already am planning my business. I want my business structures or events and what have you already set up so that it survives maybe the next 6 months after we move into the country, because I want to enjoy that time and not have to, stop my meetups with my family and you know work. So in that sense, I'm actually quite blessed because not everyone has that ability, or has is able to do that. Some people, as soon as they get into country, basically just get 2 days off and they jump into their jobs. Adam can get maybe a week off and then usually he jumps into work straight away. So, but I can actually enjoy myself longer because I don't have a physical job to go back to. I can actually take my time. And I can take more time if I structure my business properly. So this is why I always talk about, creating your business so that it's portable, creating your business so that you have freedom to do what actually matters. Because after being away for 3 years from family, it's family time, really. Right? I just want to, be there, enjoy them, and have fun with them. Enjoy the stuff that we've missed, right? Visit places that we want to go to. So that's what we're gonna be doing. And again, with those things, 42 weeks before you go is definitely when you want to get started with those, because if you wait when everything gets even busier with the move, then you won't be able to do those things properly, right? Okay, so what else do we need to get sorted? Some people who move around have to organize their own shipping companies, have to organize their own moving companies. We have a company with the high commission here, so usually the embassies where we are, have their own suppliers. I think that's what they're called, right? Companies that they deal with, and we just organize the schedules with them. One thing that's really good to note when you get to that point is to find out, okay, how long does it take for them to get your stuff back to your hometown? And how long is the clearing gonna take? How long will it take for the boat to get from your place right now, or you're posting right now, to your home? Because I always make sure that when we get home, when we get settled, we probably only have, a week or so before we get our stuff. So those are the things that you take into account. This time around, I'm not so fussed about that, because we are actually not moving into our home right away, because we don't have our own home right now. So, but if we did, so whenever we had to go back to Canberra, when we had our home in Canberra, it was always that way. We would time it so that our stuff would get there maybe just, a week after we arrive. In some cases, we've actually managed to do it 2 days after we've arrived, which was amazing, right? Because you don't want to arrive without your things. So I have a photo of when we got home to Australia before, and it was funny because we didn't have much stuff, so we were able to buy like a little table where we put our things in. uh, we had no we had moved into our house that had been newly painted and newly recarpeted and what have you. And we didn't have curtains. The curtains didn't make it because that was during COVID. And so we were using, bubble wraps to cover our windows. And it was just so funny. But the great thing about that was we were able to actually organize for our stuff in storage to arrive, just a few days before we arrived. And then our shipment did not take much longer than that. So timing of the arrival of your things is really important. If you, like us, don't have a place to go back to, ensuring that you also know what you're going to be traveling back with is really crucial. So we need to travel back with Juke's Crate. We cannot go home without Juke's Crate. So Juke's Crate's not going to go to the shipment. It's going to come with us. So those things, right? You need to just have a checklist ahead of time that you've organized, so that you know exactly what it is that you need to bring back with you. And a checklist as well, that's on your fridge, or like a flip chart like this, where you start putting a checklist, is also important, so you know which ones you want to get rid of, right? As you go around the house and you see something, go, yep, that's gonna go. Yep, this is what I want to sell. Yep, this one I want to give away. So when you have that, everything is organized. You don't have to stress about what you're gonna do with everything in the last minute. Because honestly, the last couple of months, just passes by like a blur, because that's also when a lot of the farewells happen. A lot of the last minute stuff has to happen. So not a great time for you to start planning about your move in the last minute. Okay. um Documentation is another thing. we need, when Adam and I were talking about, okay, when are we going to send Juke away, we also had to take into account, okay, when will the people replacing us arrive, what is a time frame likely going to be, what if they've got kids, when the school ends. So those are the things that we were thinking of, right? You don't wait until that happens, you don't wait until you know who's replacing you. You have to plan ahead. If it's single, what are we going to do? If the person that's replacing you has kids, what are we going to do? If they say they want to spend Christmas and come here after Christmas, what are we going to do? Right? So we took all those into account. We also had to take into account our paperwork, right? So when do our visas in country actually expire? Do we need to organize for an extension of those visas to allow for the possibility of a delayed trip back home because of whatever circumstances? You never wait till the last minute, because as much as you'd like to think that things happen very quickly, they don't always happen quickly, especially in December. December is the most difficult time to leave a place or to arrive in a place, because a lot of people take time off in December, and they don't always just take time off for Christmas. Some people take time off from the 15th of December, right? Some people are rushing things already, even at the start of December, because they're already planning to cram all their work during that period to allow them time for the holidays. So planning them ahead, having dates in our flip chart, knowing when we apply for our paperwork, when we get things done, is really important. Going back, Juke's documentation, what we needed for Juke, we actually spoke with our contact back in November. That was how early we actually started talking to them, to understand the time frame that we needed to take into account. How about health? Do you also have to check that to move between countries? Yeah, so usually, before we leave Australia, we have our health clearances. Going from Fiji to Australia, it's not such a big thing, because I mean, really, all the health checks usually happens when we land in the country, right? So we go, okay, need to make sure that we're all good. We do our full physical. It's been 3 years since the last full physical, so all the major health checks happen when we land in country. When we leave Australia, we go to another country, it also happens before we leave the country. Over here, I think the things that I will be looking at is my dental. I do love my dentist here. Again, Seoul Dental Clinic is an amazing, amazing clinic here in Suva. They are Korean dentists, thus the name Seoul. And I will look at the things that need to get done before I go. Obviously, in some cases, people only want to get done what's urgent, and that is usually the case, especially if you have dentists that you love in the next post. There have been cases as well that I've had that wanted other dentists to look at. So that's what I'm doing. It's not necessarily only because I love this dentist, but because in the last 2 years that we've lived here, I have been delaying getting my teeth sorted, because I've been so afraid of the dentist. So I would wait till I go back to Australia, get stuff done. But the major work that we were hoping to delay till we go back might not be a wise idea to actually do. So those things I am getting done. So yes, health checks, really important. Check out what you need. Check out what can wait till the end, what needs to be done right now, definitely. So those are the things, yeah, we are going to be organizing. But yeah, usually we just, if it can wait, we just do all of that back home. Okay. Thank you for the question. Did I put that back? Yes, I did put that back. Um, talked about visas. Oh, medical records, really, really important. So when you live in a place for 3 years, you obviously would have visited a doctor, visited a dentist, visited an optometrist. Maybe you have to make sure that you go to those places and get your medical records. Usually when I go on my visits, I tell them, look, can you email me the records so that I already have them and I don't forget about them. But it's good practice to also as early as the year before you go, to start getting in touch with them and say, okay, I need my records, I need your notes actually emailed to me so that I can present it to my doctor when I get home, because that's your medical history. You need to have access to your medical history. It will be very, very difficult to organize that after you've left the country. So you need to get that done. Okay. Medical records, school records. If you've got kids, again, another thing that you need to have with you. Usually the school records we get to organize straight away because we plan for the kids. And that is something that the next school needs. So find out what your next school will ask for so that before you leave the country, you get all that organized. Even if they're big schools, even if your kids go to international schools, problems can occur. So I always prefer organizing it before we leave the country, because you can always go and visit the school and say, hey, I need this, blah, blah, blah. Right? Okay. If you've set up a business registrations, you got to make sure you've got those. Licenses, you got to make sure you have those. And your license in the country. So when we go back home, we need to make sure all our documents are up to date. Yeah. But with documentations in your country, you need to make sure that you also have like a checklist. Check when your license is going to be due, which reminds me, we have to actually get some organizing happening. Credit cards. When credit cards expire, you got to make sure that your credit cards are sent to you as well. Or if you're doing short trips back into your country, you organize to get it when you go on your short trip. So it's like moving to a new home, right? Or a new state. It doesn't necessarily only happen when you're moving countries, but it is magnified. The need to be more organized is magnified when you're moving countries, right? Because it's not as simple to just fly back and get yourself organized or get all those documents if you forget to organize them, right? Okay. And then I think there's a lot of thought in, and I said, I mentioned this to you guys, ever since I think December came in, Adam and I have been sitting and discussing, okay, what do we do when we get there? What are we going to do in terms of business, in terms of job? What's going to change? Um, what gets paused? What do we need to, where do we need to pivot? What do we need to, um, uh, you know, uh, explore? And what do we need to consider? Because again, every move is a chance to actually fix things up. Every move is a chance to make things better. But if you don't know what you're going to be fixing, if you don't think about it, and if you don't talk about it, then you can't prepare yourself ahead in your move. You don't want to just be, blase about it and go, oh yeah, it will happen. What will happen? Just enjoy myself right now. When packing comes, you'll go panic, figure out how you're gonna fit everything into your container, figure out, find out when you get to the next post that there was a lot of junk in what you actually brought with you. Not talk about what you're gonna do next, and then you get there, you're spending months figuring out how you're going to fit your business in that new place. So a lot of planning is really important before your move in terms of what you want to do after. If you guys want to have a break, which is also something that Adam and I have spoken about, you need to plan that too, right? Because if you don't plan your next moves, your breaks, they're not going to happen. Okay? Anything that anything everything, sorry, that's planned ahead always, more often than not, happens more smoothly. Okay, so transitions happen more smoothly if you do it that way. Uh, oh, internet. You need to make sure that if you have a bank in the country where you're at, you need to understand what the paperwork is. We have had some friends who've left the country and then realized that the bank account wasn't closed properly, and there were dramas with the banks in that country. You don't want to get blacklisted because of things that you did not understand or things that you did not fix properly, right? Um, Services, we have had some situations as well where we've left the country, we've canceled our account, and then they've still charged us, or they've sent us notices saying, "Hey, you haven't paid for it." You need to make sure that all of that is done in writing. And I this happened, where was I think when we moved from, I think, PNG to Indonesia. They were still charging me, and I just showed them all the documentation. Everything was on email, everything was documented, and I said, "Yep, this is the information." And yep, we've canceled that way before we left. So we never cancel stuff on the day; we cancel them way before. In here in Fiji, we have opted for services that are not auto debited, services that are paid on a monthly basis. We do have Starlink that's being paid on a monthly basis. So all of that we need to take into account when we leave the country. Okay? Because it's not as simple. Some people say, "Oh, I'm just going to cancel it." Doesn't always work smoothly, right? I mean, even back in Australia, I've had instances where I've been billed for something that I've canceled already, and I've had to call them back again. So, same thing works everywhere else. It doesn't always happen smoothly. Okay. All right. What else am I missing? So, I think the question that you need to ask yourself when you're on a posting is, and you know that the end is drawing near, are you preparing early enough? How much stuff do you need to prepare for? What are you going to be? What are you going to be risking if you don't prepare ahead? And you'll realize that in more cases than none, um, there are a lot of dramas that can take place if you don't prepare ahead. So, anyway, I think we've gone on for quite a while. Oh, didn't realize the topic was going to be so long. But, yep, again, 42 weeks and countdown. And we have started our paperwork. We have started identifying what we need to get done on a monthly basis. And it is exciting. It is a little bit scary. But when you prepare, anxiety is not, you don't usually get too anxious because you're preparing ahead. We have been assessing all the different options, what might happen. Are we going somewhere else? Are we going straight home? Are we extending? And understanding all those different options gives you the chance to also look at, okay, what are the different possibilities for each option? What do we do? And again, just being prepared makes a huge difference. So guys, I hope that's helped. I don't want to go over an hour. And thank you for joining me today. Do type up questions if you are a trading spouse and you're going to be going to your next post, or you're finishing up in your post and you've got questions about this topic. Let me know. If you know someone that might benefit from this topic, please do share the video. And again, thank you for joining me. I look forward to catching you tomorrow, 2 p.m. Friday, for another Cuppa with Michelle. Have a great day, guys. Bye.